Facebook Live, so if you want to switch over and watch it from there, you're certainly welcome to do that. But welcome, happy Monday morning. I am excited to be here today. You know, I've been in this business of real estate for 24 years, and I have to tell you, it's one of the most exciting things that I think anybody could do is to be in the business of real estate, and yet it's one of the most difficult things. And we're going to get into why I think that's the case. But you know, I was reading this weekend a quote by Mr. Steve Jobs, one of the most wealthy people in the world ever to exist. I think the guy's worth somewhere between 70 and 80 billion dollars. That's a billion with a B. And he said in this quote that I read is, if you are born poor, that is not your fault. And I think we could all agree with that. We're born into certain circumstances that aren't under our control. But he said, look, if you're born poor, that's not your fault. But he went on to say this. He said, but if you die poor, that is your fault. And I have to tell you, I agree absolutely 100% with him. This business of real estate, you think about it, there isn't another thing that we could choose to do where we could make such minimal investment in terms of monetary investment and make such significant returns. Last week, I had the opportunity to spend 4 days in Las Vegas with many of you at the Superstar Retreat. And we had the opportunity to watch and listen to a lot of top producers. When I say top producers, I'm talking about ladies and gentlemen who've been in the business for 8, 9, 10, 20, 30 years and who are making millions of dollars a year. And I mean millions of dollars every single year. And I asked myself the question, I thought, how is it that somebody can be in this business and make millions of dollars where the average agent, get this is a fact, according to the National Association of Realtors, the average agent will make approximately $50,000 a year. Now you might say, well, $50,000 a year, that's a reasonable income given the average income in the United States. Well, I say it's ridiculous and it's nonsense, particularly when you consider what the federal government says is the poverty line in the United States. It is $50,000 approximately for a family of 4. That is the poverty line. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a business where if you're in it, why settle for $50,000? Why even settle for $100,000 or $200,000? Because the opportunity is there. The truth is, we can make a lot more money in this business if we'll just simply do it the right way. You know, I was speaking to Russ Orchard. Many of you know that name. He's the head of our education department and program. He's part of the peak training program. He leads that out. Excuse me. And he oftentimes will say that in the business of real estate, that 13 out of 14 real estate agents will fail. Now that's the bad news. The good news is that means then that 1 out of 14 will succeed. And so what I know is that given the fact that you're on this call and that you're part of this company, whether you're part of Everest or Troop, but part of the Everest organization, you're doing the right thing and your chances of earning millions of dollars in this business have gone up significantly. If you follow through. You know, the thing that I want to talk about today is this. Communication has patterns. There is predictability to it, whether it's good communication or bad communication. And in the business of real estate, if we can figure out how to engage in the right patterns, in those good habits of communication, then we're going to end up making a ton of money. And really, ultimately, that's what we want. I don't think that any one of you are here in this business as a philanthropic endeavor. You're here to actually make money. And if you're looking at it the right way, you've actually started a business. That's what you own. You have a business in real estate and you're here to make a ton of money. Well, if you think about it, great businesses, they have formulas, they have patterns, they have systems that they follow. And because of that, they get predictability of outcome and they get duplication of outcome. So if you think about it, our most basic skill in the business of real estate is the skill of communication. And the truth is that communication has patterns. And if we can identify those patterns, especially those that are used by the highest producing agents, and we duplicate that process, we too can make as much money as they do or even more. It only comes down to our willingness to recognize the pattern and then our willingness to actually practice the pattern and then implement it as we go out and talk to people, if that makes sense. So let me share with you the very simple pattern, because it's something that it really is simple. The challenge is that it's not easy, and it's not easy because it's something that we have to learn, we have to inculcate it, we have to practice it. You know, if you think about the amount of practice that professionals will do in other arenas or industries, for example, in the NFL, the average NFL player will practice 40 minutes for every 1 minute of actual playtime. So the truth is, what we need to do is make certain that we are practicing a lot more. We're going to switch the screen apparently because I'm sideways. Hopefully I'm right now. We just got told that we were not right to the world, so we are now, hopefully. Danette, are we good? Yep. Sorry for the technical difficulty, but are we good? Okay. So I'm back. So 40 minutes of practice to every 1 minute of playtime. And my question for you is this: when you think about the time that you spent in the business last week, or if you were at the Superstar Retreat, then the week before that, when you worked 5 consecutive days, how often did you practice? Did you practice every day? See, if you have a child or a grandchild and they came to you and said, I want to learn to play an instrument, learn to sing, or learn to play a particular sport, but they said to you, look, I don't want to practice the skills of that sport or that skill of singing, for example, and I certainly don't want to go to practice and be coached, you would say, well, then you probably shouldn't play the sport, or you shouldn't try to learn to sing or to play the piano, because you're going to have to practice and you're going to have to be coached. We have to do that in this business. The reason that we saw last week at the Superstar Retreat on stage people who were making $4 million or more a year, because they absolutely practice to a very high degree. So what do they practice? What do they implement? Let's take a look at this. I call it the response pattern. And if you're on the phone, I'll give you a description of what I'm writing here. I've just written the words response pattern. The response pattern is that system or that process, that formula that is predictable, that if we follow it, it makes it a whole lot easier in the conversations with prospects, whether they are buyers or sellers, because this works with buyers or sellers, to build a connection or build rapport and to build value so that you have the ability to get them to do what it is that you want. Because ultimately, think about this. All we are is trying to lead people through a conversation. That's what this is going to be. I'm going to show you here. Simply a conversation that allows them to change their perspective, to change their outlook, to change their behavior, to follow you to help them get what it is that they want. It's as simple as that. In other words, we are leaders. And leaders, the number one skill of a great leader is communication. And that's really all this is. It's a communication response pattern. So the first thing that we do in sales, of course, is what? We have to, fundamentally, we understand that we have to ask questions. But we've got to do it with a great deal of energy and enthusiasm. So one of the things that I want you to keep in mind is that as you apply this response pattern, you have to make certain that you're doing it with a lot of energy and enthusiasm. You have to do it with a smile. You have to communicate to people both physically as well as with your tonality that you're excited to be there with them, whether it's over the phone or face-to-face, knocking on a door or sitting at their kitchen table. People need to know that they're working with somebody who's excited about what it is that they do. Look, nature abhors the vacuum. Nature wants to fill dead space. It always wants to put energy in dead space. Well, you and I are no different. We are attracted to energy and we are repelled by the lack of it. And just think about the people in your life that you come in contact with on a daily basis. There are those that as soon as you see them, they bring a smile to your face because they're already smiling. You ask them, how's your day? And they don't just say fine or okay. They say it's fantastic, it's amazing, things are great. And that's always their answer because they're energetic, they're excited about life. And then there are those who are like Droopy the dogs, like, oh boy, life is kind of, well, it's okay. It could be better, I suppose. That's my best Droopy the dog. It's my best impersonation. But look, there are people like that. You're repelled by people like that, and you're attracted by people who are energetic and enthusiastic. So as you go through this process, as we talk about this, remember, you have to do it with a great deal of energy and enthusiasm. The first thing that we want to do, though, is when we are knocking on a door or we are picking up the phone and prospecting, is we want to ask a question. So number one, ask a question. And the reason for that is this, ladies and gentlemen. The number one building block of great communicators is their ability to ask questions. See, asking questions allows us to discover, And the first thing that I always want to discover if I'm in the process of trying to commit somebody to meet with me for an appointment or to sign a contract is I want to take a temperature gauge. I want to know where they are right out of the gate. I'm not going to wait to find out where they are. I want to find out exactly where they are. So this is what I would do. If, for example, you're prospecting for sell-by owners, because some of you do that, I don't wait to ask them to meet for an appointment. Right out of the gate, I ask for an appointment. I just simply say, hi, my name's John Ciet with Century 21 Everest Realty Group or Century 21 Troop Real Estate, and I noticed that your home is for sale. I'm knocking on your door, or I'm calling to find out when you plan on interviewing the right agent for the job of selling your home. I want to know immediately when they are going to list with a real estate agent, or if they're going to at all, because that question is going to elicit that answer. They're going to say, no, I'm not interested in working with an agent, or we're going to wait about a month before we do. But I want to take a temperature gauge to know where they are immediately so I know where I stand. Because oftentimes when I ask that question in prospecting, or when it's time to sign a contract, when I just simply say, are you ready to sign the contract? That's a question. They will say yes, or we are ready, we would like to meet with you. So don't be afraid to ask that closing question. So we ask a question, and then the second step is this. We wait for a response. In other words, we're going to what? Listen. Great communicators understand this, ladies and gentlemen. The number one building block is asking questions, but it will do you no good if you don't listen to the answer. And the reason for that, of course, is this. I always like to take the open book test. And what I mean by that is this. Remember when we were in school and we had the option, the teacher would say you can either do a closed book or an open book test before they would actually give the test. I don't know if your teachers ever did this, but occasionally mine would. And they would give us a choice, and then the next day we would have the test. And I can tell you that without fail, every time we would always say the open book test, right? And the reason for that is this, is the answers were in the what? In the book. And because they were in the book, all we had to do was look through the book to find the answers, as opposed to try to memorize and imagine all the questions that could be asked. So as a great communicator, to be prepared for that appointment or for the conversation, if we will ask questions, we will discover, we will get the information we need to give a better presentation. So we want to ask the questions, and then step number 2, we want to listen. The other reason that we want to listen beyond discovering is that listening does something that's very important in any relationship. And this, we're talking about a relationship. This is, albeit a business relationship, but it is still a relationship. In all relationships, the number one need is validation or acceptance. And the reason for that is this. We're all humans. Your FSBOs, your expireds, your just listed, just sold, your SOI, your spouse, your children, your grandchildren, your neighbor, the stranger in the elevator, every one of them, all of us, our number one human need is validation, it's acceptance. If we recognize that in this business conversation, if we ask the question and then we listen, and then we communicate with them that we listen, in other words, we confirm that we listen, that does a couple of things. One, it validates them, therefore it builds a connection between us and them, and it allows us to continue the conversation longer than we otherwise could if that connection did not exist. How many of you have ever been at a door or on the phone and you could feel that there was no connection there? You had a difficult time building the connection. The person on the phone wanted to get off quickly, you could hear it, you could feel it, and as a result, you wanted to get off the phone as well because it was very uncomfortable. I can tell you all that was simply a lack of rapport or connection. So we want to ask the question, we want to listen, and then the third step is this. We want to communicate that we listen, and the way we do that is we repeat and affirm. And the repeat and affirm is simply this. If I said to the, let's say I said to the expired, I noticed that your home came up on my computer as an expired listing, and I was calling to see, when do you plan on interviewing the right agent for the job of selling your home? And then they simply respond by saying, you know, we're not going to list with an agent right now. We think we're going to try to maybe give it 3 months and then put the home back on the market. That's their response. So what I do, of course, as they're speaking, I nod my head. Even if I'm over the phone, I'm going to nod my head because my physical reaction will come through in my tonality when I communicate with them. I'm just simply going to say, I get it. So you want to give it 90 days before you decide to put it back on the market. I repeat the words that they use, maybe not verbatim, but some of them, so they know that I listened to what they said. That's the repeat part. That's repeating. That lets them know John's listening to me. The second part is the affirm. Then I would simply say, you know what, if I were you, I would probably do the same thing too. Now that phrase affirms to them that it's okay to have the perspective that they have. It doesn't mean they're right. It just simply means that you listen to what they said and they're okay to have that perspective. Now the reason that is important is this, if you think about it. As a salesperson picking up the phone or knocking on the door and asking that question of an expired, for example, and if they say no, we're going to wait 90 days, and then you immediately go to the kill, so to speak, and try to convince them why they should meet now, well, you know, really what you should consider is meeting with me now, because I can show you how I can get your home sold, because the last agent obviously didn't know what he or she was doing. You really need to consider meeting with an agent. Doing that puts them in a position where we're making them wrong. And the last thing that we want to feel, especially with a stranger where we have no connection or rapport and no value has been built, we don't want to be made to feel wrong. So if we put them in that position, what they do is like a fighter, a boxer, they get in that stance like, okay, let's go for it. And we've all done that before. You've been on a call or you've been at a door where you did that. You immediately went for the kill when they said no, and you tried to convince them why their perspective was wrong. And as a result, things went sideways. They put up that defensive wall, they probably slammed the door, they probably hung up on you, or they started swearing, or they just simply said, you know what, we're not interested. It's a rapport killer. It kills the conversation. So we have to repeat and affirm. The fourth step is this. Oh, wait a minute, let me backtrack here. Very important. With the first three steps, we ask the question, and number two, we listen, and number three, we repeat and affirm. But one of the most important things, though, in this process of the pattern and understanding what it takes to be a great communicator is our mindset, our attitude as we are doing it. And I want you to think about this. So let's slow down for just 1 minute. The process of prospecting is about having conversations. And it's about having conversations that we believe will be positive, meaning that we will set an appointment or we will get people to sign a contract. If you don't believe that, can you see how that would be a problem in terms of your mindset and your willingness to actually pick up the phone or to knock on the door or to ask the closing question to please sign the contract? See, our mindset about what we believe they are going to say affects the way we're going to behave. And our behavior, meaning a lack of confidence, will be perceived by them, and that lack of confidence will be transferred to them, and therefore they won't feel confident, which is a deal killer when it comes to leadership. See, ladies and gentlemen, the truth is we are leaders in this position, and if we don't come across as confident, that will be read and reflected by our prospects and by our clients, and it will be a deal killer. We won't get the business that we need because they're looking for a leader. So we have to have the perspective that when we ask that question, in other words, step number one, that they are going to say what? Yes. When I close, when are you planning on interviewing the right agent for the job of selling your home? I expect they're going to say, right now. I've been waiting for your call. That's my belief. And you say, really, John, come on. Are you serious? Yes. Because if it's a choice to believe that they're going to say yes or no, why wouldn't I choose if I'm in my right mind? Not being driven by fear, but by opportunity. The opportunity to make a ton of money in this business and to transform my life and my family's life and those in this world that I want to affect. Why wouldn't I believe that they're going to say yes? Otherwise, why would I ever pick up the phone? I wouldn't. See, and I think that's the challenge for a lot of us. We don't have the right attitude, believing that when we pick up the phone, good things are going to happen. You got to believe it. So when I pick up the phone and ask the question, I believe they're going to say yes. I believe they're going to say yes. That's my expectation. However, you and I both know that normally when we ask the question, they're not going to say yes. They say what? They say no. And you know what? As far as I'm concerned, that is okay. I expect that they're going to say yes, but when they say no, I'm not surprised. See, if I'm surprised, if you're surprised when you ask a closing question, it's going to interrupt your flow. It's going to interrupt your confidence. And as a result, you won't get further into the conversation and you won't get the yes to the question of sign the contract or let's meet for the appointment. So we have to have the right mental attitude as we're going through this process. We ask a question with absolute certainty they're going to say yes, but when they say no, it doesn't throw us off like a fighter. We just keep standing there with our strong stance, ready to go. We listen, we repeat, and we affirm, and then the next step after we repeat and affirm is to simply ask 3+ questions. We're going to ask 3 questions. Now you might ask, okay, I get that we're going to ask another question because, John, that's what great communicators do. They ask a lot of questions to build a connection and to build value, to discover. It's important to do that because we want to take the open book test, right? The more information we know, the more we can help the individual discover what it is that they're concerned with and what they're trying to accomplish. But why 3+ questions? Well, it's a simple concept. What we want to do is we want to recognize that if we will ask 3 questions, it gives us an opportunity to build that rapport, to discover more, to build a bridge between the gap that exists. Because when we asked the question and they said no, there were 2 things that were ultimately missing: a connection and value. Because see, if they truly do need to sell their home, which in most cases they do, if they truly need to sell their home, the fact is they would say yes if there was a connection and there was value. They just haven't heard enough, they haven't experienced you enough to say yes. So therefore, what we do, even though they said no, we don't give up. When they say, we're not listening with the real estate agent, I appreciate your call. I don't give up there. I don't stop and say, oh, well, I'm sorry to bother you. Have a good day. I hear that happen a lot. In fact, that's typically what happens in the business of real estate because we don't want to offend people. We don't want to push people. We don't want to make people feel uncomfortable, which is fine. But the truth is that great leaders are willing to push through that resistance in a way that builds rapport, that builds value. So when they say, we're not listening with the real estate agent, we're going to sell it on our own, I just simply repeat that back, especially if they say it with a lot of energy and defiance. I'm going to repeat it back with that sort of energy. You don't want to list with the real estate agent. You want to sell it on your own. You know what? If I were you, I would feel exactly the same way too. So let me ask you this question. When you do sell your home, where are you moving to next? And then they answer the question. In most cases, they will. See, what I did, instead of pondering on this idea of meeting with the real estate agent, I changed the subject. That is called a pattern interruption. So if you're taking notes, write that down. It's one of the sales skills. It's a pattern interruption. We ask questions that are off topic, because that was off topic, wasn't it? When you sell your home, where are you moving to next? That had nothing to do with them meeting with me for an appointment. It has everything to do with the conversation of building rapport and a value and getting them to set an appointment, but it has nothing to do with meeting for an appointment. It gets them off the topic of that resistance. I'm not going to meet with an agent, I'm not going to work with an agent, to talking about what it is they're trying to accomplish, which they're usually excited about. So I ask that question, they give the answer, and then I repeat it. Then I'm going to ask 2 more questions. I could simply ask, and how soon do you have to be there? When they explain to me that they're moving to St. George, Utah. And they're moving there because they're now retired and they want to get in that lifestyle. They want to golf more and travel more, right? Then maybe they're going to, if they're living in Utah and they're Mormon, they're going to do a service mission for their church, right? We respond to that and ask them, well, how soon do they want to be there? And they say, well, we need to be there no later than November 15th. Great, November 15th. Good for you. And is it important for you to get your home sold before that time? And they say, yes. Now I've asked 3 questions that were off topic. Then I'm simply going to circle back around. I ask question, 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 and in the center of this infinity sign is the close. I ask the closing question again. When they say that yes, we absolutely have to sell it and we've got to get it closed no later than November 15th and be in St. George, then I'm simply going to say, I'm going to repeat and affirm that. So you got to be in St. George by November 15th. And then I'm going to simply say, and that is the very reason we need to get together. What will work best for you, an afternoon and an evening, where I could share with you how we could get you and your wife to St. George by November 15th so you can go serve your mission. And then they're either going to say what? They're either going to say yes or no. Now, I believe, and you believe at this point, that they say what? That they say yes, but we're not surprised when they say no. If they say yes, then we simply do what? We don't celebrate at this point. A lot of agents do, and they forget to do the next thing. The next thing we do, of course, is we pre-qualify them. We start to ask them pre-qualifying questions and then set the time for the appointment. But if they say no, what do you think the next step is? And of course, that is, after we've repeated and affirmed, step number 5, because we asked those 3 questions. Then step number 6 is we ask 3+ questions. In other words, we're simply going to go back to the questions. In other words, remember, it's like when you use your shampoo, right? And you look at the directions on the back. It reads lather, rinse, and then repeat. That's the process here. You ask a question, you listen, you give a repeat and affirm, you ask 3+ questions, you repeat and affirm, you ask 3+ questions. It's just a cycle. It's a pattern. Remember, ladies and gentlemen, great communication has patterns. And if we'll recognize those patterns and we will implement them, we'll get great results. There is a reason that Toyota gets $24,000 for a Corolla. There's a reason that Rolls-Royce gets $500,000 for their most basic model, the Ghost. They follow different patterns. You have a pattern in your communication right now. My question for you is it the right pattern? Are you getting Rolls-Royce sort of results where you're making hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars a year? Or are you getting a Toyota Corolla result? Nothing wrong with the Toyota Corolla unless you want more than that. You have to make certain you have the right process, the right formula, the right patterns. And if you do, if you'll pay attention to them, if you will learn them, if you'll practice them daily and implement them, I promise you, this business will allow you to make whatever it is that you want. The great equalizer in this business is going to be your willingness to practice the skills that we need. It doesn't matter how long you've been in this business. It doesn't matter where you're from, whether you were born poor, rich, black, white, skinny, fat, tall. It does not matter. There are just simply patterns. And if we'll learn them, we'll practice them, and we'll implement them in our business, we'll be successful. Appreciate you being on the call today. I'm excited that you're in this business. I know you can do it. We'll see you next time.